What is going on, everybody? I hope you guys are enjoying your Monday morning / afternoon. This is NYG JeffyT 3285, and I'm here to give everybody my 53-man roster projection going into tomorrow's roster cutdown, and we're going to find out which players are going to make the New York Giants' initial 53-man roster. Now, as we all know, whatever the 53-man roster is by 4 p.m. on Tuesday does not mean that it's going to be the 53-man roster, as you're going to have waiver wire claims, you're going to have players being traded, you're going to still have a lot more transactions that are going to be happening throughout the rest of this week going into the following week as we begin the NFL season. So just because a player makes the initial 53-man roster does not mean that they're going to be sticking with the roster after the week is over. So you could still see some other moves being trickled in and out. But this is just my New York Giants 53-man roster projection that I have for the team going forward. And as we all know, the New York Giants ended up going 2-1 in the preseason after they lost on Sunday against the New York Jets 31-27, as the Jets were able to make a comeback and be able to get a score towards the end of the game. But that's not the whole story. It's just going to be about what players were able to do enough, not only in preseason action, but also in training camp, to make the New York Giants' initial 53-man roster going forward. So I ended up going with at least 26 players on the offensive side of the field, and I ended up going with 25 on the defensive, and then obviously the two players that are going to be on there as the kicker and the punter. And then one of the players that I have there is going to be the punt returner / kick returner that has initially made the roster going forward. So I'm going to start out with the offensive side of the football. And right now I have the New York Giants having 3 quarterbacks make the roster. As obviously Daniel Jones, he's going to be the starter this year. He's going to be the 1 quarterback there. Tyrod Taylor is going to be the number 2 quarterback on this team. I know he got injured a little bit, got banged up yesterday in the game, but it looked like he's going to be all right. So he's going to be the backup quarterback going into the season. And then I have Davis Webb as the 3rd quarterback because I think his knowledge of the system of Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka's system, he's going to be a big-time asset, wearing the headset and being able to help out Daniel Jones when it comes to running these certain plays for the New York Giants. Not just Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka, but you're going to have Davis Webb there as that veteran quarterback that's going to be able to assist Daniel Jones when it comes to the play. So I have 3 quarterbacks making the roster. This is where I have one of my surprises at the running back position, as I actually went with Saquon Barkley. Obviously, Saquon Barkley is going to be the bell cow of this team. He's going to be probably the central figure of the New York Giants offense going forward, so he's going to be the starter with this team. But then I actually have a couple of surprises. I actually have Antonio Williams, who's actually looked very good throughout the preseason and training camp. I have him as my number 2 running back on this team. I actually have Gary Brightwell as my number 3 running back, and a surprise shocker, I have Jashawn Corbin as my number 4 running back, and I actually think Matt Breida is going to be on the outside looking in because of the missed time he's had in practice due to injury, and because of the way these other running backs have looked in training camp and preseason. I really just believe that Mike Kafka and Brian Daboll are going to want to go with the youth and see what these guys can bring to the table. Obviously, Gary Brightwell also has experience when it comes to special teams. He's obviously a favorite of special teams coordinator Thomas McGahee, so I think that's what's going to help him out. Antonio Williams has great north-south running ability, so I think that's what's going to help him out. And Jashawn Corbin has really showed a lot. And not just with his ability to run and catch the ball out of the backfield, as well as being able to run north and south, but I really like what he's been able to bring to the table in terms of his blitz pickup and in terms of his run blocking. I think that's another reason why he's going to be able to make this team, because he's such a versatile running back. I just don't think the New York Giants can afford to put him on the practice squad, because I think there's going to be a team out there that's going to snatch him. So I actually had Jashawn Corbin make it as the 4th running back, and Matt Breida is going to be my running back on the outside looking in. Now, in terms of the wide receiver position, I actually have 7 wide receivers making this roster, and the reason why I have 7 is because of the injury issues that we have at the top of the wide receiver depth. Now I have Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney, Sterling Shepard, and Wan'Dale Robinson making it as my top 4 wide receivers. I think they're all legit locks to make this team. Now, I also have Richie James as my other receiver that's going to make it, and I just don't have Richie James making it because I think he's a good depth piece on here. I actually believe he's going to be the punt and kick returner for the New York Giants going forward. So I have Richie James making the roster. I have Darius Slayton, who I know he's had a little bit of issues with drops and stuff at training camp. He's been running with the second and third team, but I just don't think the New York Giants can ill afford to have Darius Slayton on the roster because of the questions when it comes to the injury issues at the starting wide receiver position. So I think he's going to make it there as depth. I have David Sills also making the roster because of just his sheer connection with Daniel Jones, and I think he showed enough in preseason as well as training camp to get the opportunity to be out there on the New York Giants' initial 53-man roster. So right now, I have 7 wide receivers for the New York Giants making the roster. So you might think that's a lot. You might think it might be a little bit of overkill, but with the injury questions you have with Shepard, Tony, as well as Galladay, there's no reason why this team can't carry 7 wide receivers going into this season. Now, the tight end position, I think this is a little bit tricky because the guys I have on here right now, I do not think that all 3 of them are going to be here after the initial 53-man roster is given. I have Daniel Bellinger, I have Chris Myrick, and I have Austin Allen as my 3 tight ends that have made the roster. We already know that Ricky Seals-Jones, as well as Gerard Akins, they both did not make the team because of the fact that, or Jordan Akins, they did not make the team because they got cut and they did not show enough, plus of injury issues. And I also had Tanner Hudson, who was just signed by the team a couple of days ago. I think he's going to be on the outside looking in, and I think the Giants are going to roll with these 3 tight ends at least for Tuesday. But I would not be shocked, nobody be shocked, if the New York Giants end up going to look for a veteran tight end to add to this group, because it's going to be asking a lot of 2 rookies and a second-year player to carry that tight end position going forward. Even though Bellinger has showed something in terms of being a good blocking and receiving tight end, even though Myrick has been pretty solid in terms of a blocking tight end, he's going to help out in the running game, as well as Austin Allen and what he could bring to the table as that third tight end, and maybe a guy that you could develop as that third tight end going forward. But I really believe the New York Giants are going to be going out there, and they're going to want to look for a veteran tight end on this position. So this is going to be the 3 guys I have right now: Daniel Bellinger, Chris Myrick, and Austin Allen, but don't be shocked that there's a veteran tight end that's added later on this week. Now to the offensive line. The offensive line right now, I have 9 guys. This is where a lot of guys I have making this roster, and the reason why I have this is because a couple of the players right now on the offensive line who I think will make the roster are banged up right now, so I think the New York Giants are going to go with a little bit more of an overload at the offensive line position. So I right now have Andrew Thomas, Shane Lemieux, John Feliciano, Mark Lewinsky, and Evan Neal. They're going to be probably the starting 5 when they're all healthy. Then I also have Joshua Azudu, who we might actually have to start on the offensive line because of the injury to Shane Lemieux. So I think he might be the starting left guard when the season begins. I have Devery Hamilton making the roster because I think he's shown enough. Even though he struggled a little bit towards the end of camp, I think he's shown enough to make the roster. I also have Will Holden, and I have Ben Bredesen making the roster. So I think guys like Eric Smith, Max Garcia, and I even believe, Roy Mbatika. I think they're going to be just on the outside looking in. Even though I think Mbatika should make the roster, I think the Giants are going to want to have that veteran offensive tackle going in. And of course, you notice I don't have Nick Gates, and I don't have Matt Peart on the roster. They're both going to be on the PUP list. Question if they're even going to make the roster going forward, even when they come off the PUP list. So I have 9 guys making the roster right now in terms of the offensive line: Andrew Thomas, Shane Lemieux, John Feliciano, Mark Lewinsky, Evan Neal, Joshua Azudu, Devery Hamilton, as well as Will Holden and Ben Bredesen. So I have 26 guys right now making the offense going forward. Now I'm going to go to the defense. And this is where I have 25 guys making the defense. Now in terms of the defensive line, I have 3 people on the defensive end position that'll be there. And I have, of course, Leonard Williams, as well as Jalen Holmes. I think Jalen Holmes has done enough to make the roster in terms of the defensive line position. And I also have the rookie Ryan Anderson. I think Ryan Anderson has showed enough where I think the Giants are going to hold on to him and put him on that roster because I think he's looked good enough, and the Giants are going to want a little bit more depth on that defensive line. Now, in terms of the defensive tackle position, I went pretty much with Dexter Lawrence. He's going to be the unquestioned guy on that defensive line in terms of the defensive tackle position. And I have Justin Ellis and Nick Williams, veteran defensive linemen that are going to be plugging up the middle, as well as DJ Davidson rounding out the defensive line. So I actually have 7 defensive linemen that are going to be on the team. And that, of course, is Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence, Justin Ellis, Nick Williams, DJ Davidson, Jalen Holmes, and Ryan Anderson. I think those are going to be the 7 guys that are going to make the defensive line roster. David Moa is another guy that's going to come up short a little bit. I'm sorry, he just didn't show enough. So he's going to be on the outside looking in terms of the defensive line. Now, in terms of the linebacker position, I'm going to go with the outside linebacker position first. And I have 5 outside linebackers right now making the team. I have Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari. Now, we all know that they're right now banged up, and who knows that they're going to be ready by the beginning of the season, but I don't think they're going to miss a whole lot of time. They might miss a week or 2, but they'll be ready at least by week 2 or 3 of the season. So I have those 2 guys, obviously, as the starters at outside linebacker. I have Quincy Roche. I have Ellerson Smith. Even though Smith is banged up right now, I think he's going to make the roster. And I have Timon Fox as the surprise guy because I think that the Giants really like what he's been bringing to the table at that outside linebacker position. So I have Timon Fox as the 5th guy on that outside linebacker position. Now, in terms of the inside linebacker position, I have 4 guys right now making the roster. So I have a total of 9 guys at the linebacker position making the roster. And I have Tay Crowder and Blake Martinez, probably going to be the unquestioned starters. And at the backup position, I have Micah McFadden as well as Austin Calitro. I think Calitro has done enough to make the roster with the plays he's been making in preseason. So I think this guy is definitely going to be on the roster by the time we start the season. So I have 9 linebackers as well as 7 defensive linemen making the roster right now. Now we get to the secondary. Now, the secondary is a little bit tricky because I think the cornerbacks especially have not really shown a whole lot in terms of making this roster. So I have right now in terms of the cornerbacks, I have 6 cornerbacks making the roster. I have, of course, Adoree Jackson, Aaron Robinson, Darnay Holmes, and Cordero Flott. I think they're locks. I mean, Flott is probably going to be the 4th cornerback on this team. Jackson, Robinson, and Holmes are going to be in the main defensive scheme going forward. Holmes is probably going to be Holmes is the slot cornerback. Robinson and Jackson, your boundary guys. And then I actually have Rodarius Williams as Rodarius Williams, and I have Rodarius Williams as my 6th cornerback making this roster right now. I actually have 5 cornerbacks. I take that back. I have 5 cornerbacks making the roster. Jackson, Robinson, Holmes, Williams, and Flott are going to be my 5 cornerbacks making this roster. You might think it's a little bit bad that I'm going very light at the cornerback position. I just think with the injuries right now in the defensive line and the linebacker position, I think the Giants are going to want to be a little bit more heavy at that position when it comes to that. And I think Williams is going to be ready by that time. And at the safety position, I actually have Xavier McKinney and I have Julian Love as the starters for the defense. I think Dane Belton, it looks like he's going to be ready for the season or maybe miss a week or so, but he looks like he's not going to be out long term, so I think he's going to be ready. He's going to be the 3rd safety on this defense, and I actually have Trent Thompson as my 4th safety, as I think he's shown enough in training camp and preseason to warrant that 4th safety position, and he's just edging out Trenton Thompson in terms of that 4th safety position going forward. So I have a total of 9 defensive backs making the roster, as I have my cornerback position, I have Adoree Jackson, Aaron Robinson, Darnay Holmes, Cordero Flott, and Rodarius Williams as my 5 cornerbacks. And at the safety position, I have Xavier McKinney, Julian Love, Dane Belton, and Trenton Thompson as my safeties going forward. And of course, at kicker and punter, it's Jamie Gillen as well as Graham Gano, kicker. I know Gano's right now in a concussion protocol, but I expect him to be ready by the time the season kicks off. So that's my 53-man roster right now. Now, like I mentioned earlier in the video, just because the 53 people I have on this roster right now doesn't mean they're going to be the 53-man roster when the season kicks off on September 11th against Tennessee. There's a good possibility you're going to see some jockeying around in terms of the roster being fixed up. There's going to be some trades. The Giants are going to look to upgrade at certain positions. So whatever the 53-man roster is right now, expect it to change. So I'm just going to go over the roster one more time. On the offensive side of the ball, I have Daniel Jones, Tyrod Taylor, and Davis Webb as my 3 quarterbacks. I have Saquon Barkley, Deshaun Corbin, Gary Brightwell, and Antonio Williams as my 4 running backs. I have Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney, Sterling Shepard, Richie James, Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson, and David Sills as my 7 wide receivers. I have Daniel Bellinger, Chris Myrick, and Austin Allen as my 3 tight ends. And I have Andrew Thomas, Shane Lemieux, John Feliciano, Mark Lewinsky, Evan Neal, Joshua Zudu, Devery Hamilton, Will Holden, and Ben Bredesen as my 9 offensive linemen. So that's 26 overall on the offensive side. And on the defensive side, I have Leonard Williams, Ryan Anderson, Jalen Holmes, Dexter Lawrence, Justin Ellis, Nick Williams, and DJ Davidson as my 7 defensive linemen that will make the roster. I have Kayvon Thibodeau, Aziz Ojolari, Quincy Roche, Ellerson Smith, Timon Fox, Tay Crowder, Micah McFadden, Blake Martinez, and Austin Calitro as my 9 linebackers that will make the team. I have Adoree Jackson, Aaron Robinson, Darnay Holmes, Rodarius Williams, Cordero Flott, Xavier McKinney, Julian Love, Dane Belton, and Trenton Thompson as my 9 defensive backs that will make the roster. So that's 25 on the defensive side. And I have obviously my punter and my kicker, and I believe Richie James is going to be making the team because he's going to be our punt returner and our kick returner for the New York Giants going forward. So that's just my 53-man roster I wanted to give you guys. My initial 53-man roster coming on for before the cuts are going to be made at 4 p.m. on Tuesday this week. So if you guys disagree with my 53-man roster, just let me know in the comment section who do you think I left off my 53-man roster that you think should be making the roster going forward. If you think I'm too heavy at one position compared to another, let me know in the comment section what you guys think. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please hit the like button below. Subscribe if you haven't already to NYG Jeffy T 3285 for more breaking news updates and chatter, as well as roster and injury updates surrounding the New York Football Giants. And turn on the bell for notifications on when the next video or short is going to drop on the New York Giants. And like I mentioned, let me know if you guys think of my 53-man roster, if you think I'm a little bit too heavy at one position, if you think I'm a little bit too light at my position, if you think there's a player that I didn't put on my 53-man roster initially, if you guys think that should be there, and if you think a guy that I did put on my roster should be taken off. So I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your Monday morning/afternoon. Take it easy, and let's see on what the New York Giants are going to do by 4 p.m. Eastern Tuesday, and what players are going to be on the initial 53-man roster for the New York Football Giants. So together blue, everybody. Let's see what the New York Giants are going to do for the 53-man roster initially. Together blue, everyone.